Hello, and welcome to the first video in the Author Level Up interview series, where I interview successful authors to see how they leveled up their careers. I'm Michael Aran, and I am joined tonight by the lovely Monica Leonelle. How are you, Monica?
Hi, I'm doing really well. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I talk about you on the channel a lot, but for the people that maybe aren't familiar with you, could you introduce yourself?
Sure, I'm a originally a fiction author. Now I also produce nonfiction, and the series that I have is called Growth Hacking for Storytellers. So it's focused on authors and how to help primarily indie authors get just get a bunch of stuff figured out, mostly writing productivity. So, how to develop a writing habit, how to write faster, how to dictate your book. And then, we're branching into telling great stories and that sort of content. So, a bunch of different stuff there. And then my fiction, it's spread out over lots of different genres. I have a couple different pen names and just focused on, I have young adult, I have sci-fi, I have romance. So this is a really good example of what not to do if you're trying to be an author because you can spread yourself too thin very quickly.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way. I like to write different things because I feel like that helps you grow, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and you write poetry as well. So I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
that's an
I'm on
interesting
the dark
one.
side. Yeah, it definitely does make your prose better. When did you start writing?
I guess I've always been writing. I started out as a blogger back in 2007, I think. And my blog it was popular amongst like 20 somethings basically. So there was like this community of 20 somethings and I met a lot of other bloggers through that. And a lot of those bloggers have gone on to do some amazing things. Like there was this 30 under 30 list for Forbes recently came out, and I had like three friends on it this year, and I was like, that's so cool. Like
Awesome.
just kind of a cool networking thing. And they're actually all younger than me because I'm not under 30 anymore. But yeah, so it's pretty cool little community. So I learned to write through blogging, and then in 2009, I wanted to write a nonfiction book. I did that. It was very painful because this was really before Amazon opened the doors on Kindle. So I was doing it the old fashioned way with like, you get your format, your print book, and like you're trying to sell, paperback copies, that sort of thing. So that's how I kind of got started in the industry. That book did okay. It paid for itself. And then the Kindle stuff came on, and having ebooks and everything that came up. And that's when I started writing fiction. And fiction for me, it was a lot more challenging than I thought it would be. And I would say I had a lot of false starts in it. I did freelance writing for years to kind of pay the bills because I kind of like quit a little too early, quit my job and everything and said like I'm going to be a writer and that's what I'm going to do. So I ended up doing freelance. Luckily I was okay at copywriting, so that's like pays fairly well at least. And then around 2014, my some of my fiction started gaining traction. So I've really only I've only been a indie author for just a couple years, like 2014, 2015, and then, this year as well. So,
Awesome. Yeah, what kind of fiction do you write for listeners maybe aren't familiar with you?
yeah, I write, well, I have romance. So in 2014, I did a romance pen name. And because romance is just such a hot genre and such a large genre, that the series there picked up almost right away. So I kind of had, I kind of just was able to gain some traction finally with what I was doing. And that was 2014. That was really kind of when I was able to figure out some of the indie author side. And then last year, I had the nonfiction, so that really grew as well. I continued with the romance stuff, And this year I'm really focused on my original stuff. So my everything under the romance pen name, it's fun, it's stuff I love. But the reason I wanted to start in this was for like young adult fantasy and sci-fi. So this year I'm kind of going back to that and really trying to reboot that brand and continue it, grow it, and that sort of thing. Get book releases out really, because right now I don't really have as many. Most of my fiction that's seeing any sort of success is romance.
Right. Well, and that's kind of segues into the next topic, which is why really wanted to have you on, was writing better, faster, and productivity. I guess we hang out in the self-publishing podcast community, so I think I had found out about you back in 2013. But like when you released Dictate Your Book, that's when it's like, wow, that was awesome. Like I read that, and it just completely changed my own perspective on writing. And so I wanted to ask you a little bit about productivity. When you first started dictating your books, what was your biggest challenge?
Well, I started dictating in 2012. So I think the biggest challenge that I had was trying to, so there was some challenge with wrangling the software and getting used to just the inaccuracies. And, sometimes, so it's 2016 now, this was 4 years ago. Sometimes I hear people like complaining about the dictation software now, and I'm like, this is great. Like, you don't understand,
Exactly.
you don't understand my pain, guys. So yeah, 2012, I had Dragon Dictate 3. I really learned through trial and error with that. And the biggest thing was learning to rewire my brain for a different writing process. And that's something that people don't realize. They might even try dictation and they're like, this is pretty cool. But then when you start doing it for fiction, it can really mess with you because it's so different. You have to really think and then speak. Like there's all these different things. You have to get used to talking with talking punctuation out loud. You have to have a better, like one thing I had to really do was get a better outlining process and get a better beats writing process. And beats was something I did not even do until dictation. But now, now I do it for anything. Like it doesn't matter if I'm writing with dictation, but now I would do it for anything. But back then, like I just didn't even have those processes. So getting those processes in place and then separating writing from editing was the other big one because, like most authors, I was so used to like writing a sentence. Ooh, I don't like that word. Let me go back and change it type of thing. And so now my process is think the sentence, figure it out there, and then say it. And I've gotten faster and faster at doing that. But, letting go of mistakes in the draft, first draft. So there were a lot of different things. It was more of like a mental struggle almost than, anything to do with like the software or anything else. It was wrapping my mind around this new way of working.
Yeah, I would definitely echo and agree with that. Like when I first started, like editing was the hardest part for me too. Like just figuring out like, okay, I just wrote this really crappy chapter and how do I go back and change it? Like I would dictate it and then I would go back and type the edit, draft 2. And it was like, oh, that defeats the purpose of it. And like I started off with like the iPhone voice app, where you dictate for you, and it just was horrible. And it took me like 3 times to really get comfortable with it.
Yeah, definitely. And now, so I just got Dragon Anywhere last night, and I highly recommend it. Yeah, it's really, really nice. Though there are a couple people I've heard that are having a tad bit of trouble with it. But I was using it last night, and it was awesome. Like I wasn't having any trouble at all. Pretty accurate as well. There were just a couple words that it wasn't recognizing, but overall pretty awesome. And my old setup was to have like my big microphone, like the podcast mic you see right here. I would carry that outside and dictate into my phone using that. And this doesn't require that at all. Yeah, it was really nerdy. So yeah, I think yeah, just the technology has come so far, and it's great. Like I love how far it's come.
Yeah, what kind of mic do you use with Dragon Anywhere?
I just use the mic on my phone. Like
Cool.
I was just holding it up like this, and that was it. So
So okay, so it's like an app on your phone then. I hadn't, I mean, I'd heard of it, but I didn't know exactly what it was.
It's basically just an app on your phone. It's a subscription. I think there's a couple different subscription options. The one I did was the 1 month. It was like $15 a month.
Mhm.
So I just wanted to kind of try it. So that's why I did it. So that it's more for like if you want to, if you want to walk around or like dictate on the go, that sort of thing.
Awesome. Well, I wanted to ask you too about equipment because a lot of people watching, like I've done a series on dictation on the Author Level Up channel, and I have a video on equipment. But could you talk about some of the equipment that you would recommend to somebody who is maybe just getting started?
Yeah, it's really hard to say. I mean, I think there are a lot of ways to trial the software, and there are a couple different websites. There are, little trials on your phone, that sort of thing. If you end up liking those and they end up working for you to get a couple paragraphs, and you're like, okay, I could see this working, then I would upgrade to just the Dragon software. And I know, I've actually, of course, I've seen your videos on this, and you agree with that. Like
Yeah.
you can't do this professionally without the Dragon software. The
Amen.
Dragon, yeah. So the software is pretty affordable. It is a couple $100s. I would also get a podcasting mic, and basically the setups that we both have. Get the podcast mic. Mine is a Audio Technica 2020, so AT 2020. Yours looks like a Yeti. Is
Yep.
that
Blue Yeti.
Yep.
Yep.
So those two are the ones that I recommend. They're like the most recommended podcast mics on the internet right now. And
Yeah.
then get a pop screen, which is like what you have as well. Like we basically have the same thing.
Yeah. It's pretty similar. Yeah.
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 So
It's definitely important because like I always like to ask that because like I've gotten questions from people who say, oh, well, I don't have the money to fork out for a podcast mic or, what
sure.
mic do you use? And it's different for every single person because like that's one of the nice parts about Dragon is that it adapts to whoever's doing the speaking.
Right.
So I love that you answered the question because like it's nice that people can kind of see different people's setups and kind of
Yeah,
how it
definitely.
works.
Yeah, and I mean the other thing is, one of the things I really like about Dragon Anywhere, which is the phone app, it's on Android and iOS, and you could just start for $15 a month. So if you feel like, okay, the desktop version is just, it's just out of my price range, it's too big of an investment for me right now, you could actually just get Dragon Anywhere and use your phone. You probably already have a smartphone. Use your phone, do $15 a month, and yeah, there's a subscription, which is kind of annoying, but it's a good way to just try it out and get started and get acclimated to it. So I would also recommend that as well.
Well, yeah, and it's also a question of, well, what's having that convenience and that mobility worth to you, right? Because how many words can you write that you wouldn't have written otherwise? And how valuable is that?
Exactly. And to me, if you're trying to build a business, I mean, to me, $15 a month is like, oh my gosh, I pay like way more than that per month. If I'm
Exactly.
if I'm getting an extra like 1,000 words a day or something, like, yeah, I pay way more than that. So I have both. I think you could get away with one or the other professionally, but having both is also nice and convenient.
And dictate your book on dictation. I've recommended it quite a bit on the channel. In writing the book, it's been very well received. I loved it. It was one of my favorite books of last year. I guess in writing the book, have you heard any success stories that you can share about people who've kind of overcome the objections and adopted dictation?
Yeah, really your success story has been
Oh, don't talk about me.
one of the best ones. It's like the highest one in the reviews. But also Susan K. Quinn. So the one thing I want to say is I don't want to take credit for these people's success stories, because I think Dictate Your Book it's been a part of the conversation, but I don't think it started it, because really I kind of saw a trend and knew a lot, just happened to know a lot about the bloggers on it, and then wrote the book kind of at the right time. So I don't want to take credit for anyone's success, but Susan K. Quinn, I know she has a group called Dragon Writers Authors Dictating, and it's a great group. Definitely join that if you're interested in dictation, and you want more recommendations on equipment and all sorts of stuff. I'm definitely not the expert on that. I don't have a Windows machine, so I don't know the setup for that. So Susan K. Quinn, she's like a sci-fi fantasy author. I've heard, I think Elizabeth Ann West is another one. Someone was just, Elle Casey. Elle Casey was just on Joanna Penn's podcast talking about dictation. And it sounded like she had a pretty good story as well. Stephanie, I'm going to butcher her last name. It's like Pajoris or something like that.
Okay.
Ooh, sorry, Stephanie, if I messed up your name. But Stephanie P. How about that?
Yeah,
So you
we're all
can,
friends here.
yeah, you can find all of these stories if you go to Dragon Writers Authors Dictating on Facebook. Join the group. The group's open, and Susan has put together a really cool document that has just a list of success stories and resources and everything else. So it's a good place to start.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll be sure to put a link to that in the comments. I actually joined that last week, and I can definitely vouch for the fact that that document's pretty awesome.
Yeah,
it's like
exactly.
the ultimate guide to dictation and how to get started.
Yep,
Well,
definitely.
I want to go back to something you said just a minute ago, and that is identifying trends. So you saw dictation. You saw that was a trend before. I'd say probably most people. I mean, I think that your book definitely did start the conversation, and I think that the reason we're having this conversation is to give you most of the credit. I think it really is because of your book and its popularity. But one of the things that I've also noticed about you as I've been following you for about the last year and a half is that you've been really good at spotting trends, right? Figuring out something, seeing it, taking advantage of the opportunity. How do you do that? And I guess for the people watching, how do they do that? What's the secret?
Yeah, that's a challenging question. So I think the biggest secret to spotting trends is to watch other closely related industries. So the reason that I knew about dictation back in 2012 is because I was a freelance writer. And when I talked to other freelance writers, so at that time, I had been a blogger for years, and I was really proud of the fact that I could write 1,000 words per hour. And now, I mean, we kind of laugh about that because that's pretty slow for an author. So as a freelance writer, I realized this just isn't paying out. This is too slow, especially for freelance blog articles or something. It was just way too slow. And I talked to some freelance writer friends, and they could all write 3,000 to 4,000 words per hour. And I was just like, this is mind blowing. I don't know anybody who can do this. I don't know any blogger who can do this. And I don't know how, I don't get how to do this. So then that's how I kind of got into dictation, because I was kind of searching for an answer, and I came across dictation. And that just, that kind of exploded my word count. And a couple other factors too. So, definitely the outlining and the beats and all of that stuff. That really helped as well. I learned about the Pomodoro method, which was because I had trouble focusing. I think a lot of writers have that. So I learned about the Pomodoro method for focus, and then the dictation, and kind of all those three, I was able to hit, the 3,500 mark with somewhat regularity. So that was a big thing. So that whole long anecdote is to say that you want to, if you're going to spot a trend, you want to watch other industries. So the industries that I watch for, because our little author community, we're very like kind of incestuous. But
Yeah, yeah,
the industries I watch are the bloggers and the digital marketers, the internet marketers, the IMs. I watch freelance writers. So definitely those what I would call like social media strategists. What I would
yeah.
call like almost like a cross discipline. Um, I'll watch all of those, and that's I'll see stuff coming down the pipeline faster as a result. Like the I mean, for example, there are just so many examples. Like the best place is really it's really in the marketing. That's where I see the most stuff coming down. Where it's like people will figure out a new thing. Like the internet marketers will figure out something new, and then like a year or two later, it'll be all the authors are using it. But it's like you could actually just be the pioneer of that. So with Dictate Your Book, I mean, again, I had a lot of years under my belt of using it, and after Write Better Faster, I just started seeing more and more questions about dictation. Like, and I would say if anything, Write Better Faster is kind of what started the conversation about dictation. Then Chris Fox published 5,000 Words Per Hour. He was also talking about dictation. So these two books got pretty popular at the same time, and people were talking about like, oh, writing faster, writing faster. And then I got so many questions, and then Dictate Your Book came out, but that was kind of like amplifying the conversation, I would say. And the book, if you read the book, I'm not really an expert at dictation. I just know like the blocks that people are having
Mhm.
when getting started, because I've experienced it firsthand. And that's really, the book is about an idea. It's not really a guide, I wouldn't say. Like it's about like convincing, it's about like bringing dictation to authors in a way that they can just change their mindset about it. Because, and I know you've talked about this a lot, where dictation kind of opened, or Dictate Your Book kind of opened your mind to this, but it didn't get you all the way there, it seemed like. You went to
Yeah.
Cindy Griggs' book for the drills and everything else, and kind of, so I see that a lot with like, so Dictate Your Book, it'll really get you started, and then you'll be in, you'll have to figure out like all that stuff we talked about before, like with your writing process changing and everything else,
Right.
learning the commands. Like a lot of that stuff is not really it's not really in my book. Um, and part of that is because Cindy Grigg did it way better than me. So I was just like, go check out her book.
Yeah, I would definitely, your book is definitely a gateway. Like it's like that missing piece, right?
Yeah.
That like people hear about it all the time. Yeah. I talk to people who say, "Oh yeah, I used the Google Android thing and that didn't work. And I tried all these other things and it just didn't work." And so I recommend them your book. And that just seems to help it click.
Hmm.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
definitely. Yeah, I love what you said about the trends. That's an awesome answer. Like because you're
Yeah.
just very forward thinking. Like you're always, it seems like you're always on like social media, emerging social media platforms ahead of everyone else. And so I
Yeah.
think that's something the audience can benefit from.
Yeah, I think I maybe gave away my secret. So,
No, no, you didn't give away any sources. So
yeah,
we
exactly.
have to figure
Sources.
out which sources you follow, but I won't ask you that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, you're one of them now. Because I don't,
Oh,
with the tripwire video that we talked about earlier. So,
yeah. Well, thank you.
that was
I try.
interesting. Yeah. So, yeah, I've been looking into that as a result of your video. And actually, a bunch of us are talking about it. So, but it sounds really cool. Yeah, I think a lot of it is, and this is especially true for the marketing stuff. Is look at what other industries are doing to market, and then figure out how to adapt that to a fiction setting. And it's challenging. Not all of it translates that well, but if you can
Mhm.
figure those things out, then a lot of times you've saved yourself a lot of steps. Um,
Right.
So one of my, I guess, friends and mentors, and also 30 under 30, like Forbes entrepreneur or whatever. His name is Emerson. He talks about how there's like there's basically a minefield, and you can either start at the edge of the minefield and try to cross the minefield all on your own, and you're probably going to get blown up at some point. Like you can do all the experiments and try to figure it all out yourself, or you can just look at, figure out who's really smart about this stuff and who's doing all these experiments, and um, kind of like just copy their playbook, and then you only have a couple more steps to go before clearing the minefield. So that like imagery has always stuck with me. And so when some internet marketer comes out with this new plan, like everybody else probably rolls their eyes at it, but I look at it and say like, well, why is this working? And look at how can this be adapted? So how can this be adapted in like a non-spammy way or like a
Right.
non-gross way? Because that's
Yeah, and a
important
lot of
as
that,
well.
yeah. Exactly. And there's something to be said too about picking out the bits and pieces, because I think you can definitely get into trouble if you try to emulate someone 100% of the way.
Yeah,
I got
exactly.
into that trouble when I first started out. I thought internet marketers were doing the coolest things, and I tried to do what they did, and want didn't work.
Yeah. Yeah, it has to fit to your personality. And I mean, anytime you're presented with someone else's system, it's not out of the box. Like, never use someone else's system out of the box. You want to take it, unpack it, and then take the pieces that, fit your personality and use those. And then you want to tweak it and add your own creativity. And I was talking to my friend Carrie earlier today, actually, and the way she described it is, as a creative, you have to find your own voice. Like, as you're writing your books, you're searching for your voice, and then you find it and you add your personality, and then that's what makes you special. And she pointed out that it's the same with marketing. So whatever marketing you're doing, you kind of have to find your marketing voice as well. And you have to figure out like what tactics work for me, how can I tweak this, how can I make this feel original and but still be effective. And so I think that's where authors struggle with marketing. It's that they're either trying to emulate or copy like something that doesn't really fit their personality, or I mean, the other side is they're not doing anything at all. But really, if you can look at marketing as a creative endeavor and kind of use that same process that you use to find your stories, and apply that same idea to finding your marketing voice, then you can make marketing really fun and exciting and also effective.
Yeah, I love that. I found that, at least for me, like my storytelling voice and my marketing voice are starting to kind of become one. And I just think that's really interesting. Joanna Penn talks all the time about, if it feels icky, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a message to the people that are watching this that maybe have some trouble with marketing or can't quite figure it out, that it's an exploration. It's really just finding yourself in a way.
Yeah, I think what you said is interesting too, because to me, writing is marketing. Like, I mean, writing, no matter what you're doing, if you're trying to tell a story, there's some element of persuasion in that. Whether it's keep reading about this character, find out what happens next. Like, what is a cliffhanger besides persuasion, right? And I mean that a lot of those things that we use in storytelling, a lot of those skill sets, they actually transfer incredibly well to marketing, because marketing is about telling stories, writing is about telling stories, and both are about persuasion. And like most authors think that marketing is this other thing, but it's actually, I mean, the skill sets are just, they cross over so much. So if you start to embrace that, you can really, you can become a full-time author, and you can have people reading your books and all that stuff. And it doesn't have to feel icky.
Oh, it's so true. Like, it goes back to what you said in the beginning, that, you're a multi-genre author. So am I. The more stories you tell, the different types of stories you tell, the better off you get in your storytelling. And so
Yeah.
I think that's like the benefit that no one talks about, right? They say, oh, don't write in multiple genres, but in reality, it's helping you tell better stories. At least that's
Yeah.
what I think across different platforms,
Yeah, definitely. I mean, definitely creatively writing in different genres is amazing.
Yeah, it's so
In
much
terms
fun.
of, yeah, in terms of getting traction, it is easier to focus a little bit more, but that doesn't mean, it depends on how much time you have really. Because
Yeah,
you can focus your efforts in like two areas at a time. I think you can still do it. So
definitely. Well, we're coming up on time, but I had a couple more questions for you. And
yeah.
the first is, what can we expect from you next? What's next for you?
Well, I mean, I don't know. There's a lot going on. I think
The
that,
life of an indie author, right?
yeah. I mean, the biggest things right now are that I'm ramping up on a lot of marketing stuff behind the scenes. So I think that'll be a bigger thing. And I may have more, I may like right now my nonfiction focuses on writing productivity, but there may be some more like marketing type
Mhm.
stuff in the future. Um, the second thing is that, um, I was focused on romance in 2014, focused on nonfiction in 2015, and in 2016, I'm kind of going back to my roots with young adult fantasy and sci-fi. So those series, I'm launching those kind of bigger this year and trying to really start to build that pen name. So that's that. The other two brands, I guess you call them. The other two brands are, those are going to continue building, but they're not going to be the biggest focus of the year. And then the other big thing is that I have a team now, and I've built the team. There's three people on like the admin marketing side. I have 5 co-writers because that's another thing we're doing is that we're going to start producing more books. There are a lot of series that I've started over the years that maybe they have like 1 or 2 books in them, but they haven't continued just due to time constraints, really. So I'm working with some co-writers to co-write, not ghostwrite. I want to be clear on that. We'll be co-writing those books together, and they're just going to help me get some more of those series off the ground. So that'll be really cool. And I haven't worked with a co-writer in a couple years, so I'm really looking forward to that. I think, creatively, it's a really different thing, and it'll just be really cool, I think. So, yeah, I guess that's a lot. So that's what's coming up.
No, that's good. I mean, that's one of the things about being an author is like no one tells you how busy you're going to be, right?
Oh
People
yeah.
see on the outside, oh, you just write books, you sit around all day. Oh no, actually, I do a lot more than that. It's
Yeah.
marketing, it's building a team like you've got, figuring out how to lead that team, the
Yeah.
marketing, productivity. It's a lot, and it's awesome to see you doing so well.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I think that writing is probably one of the hardest jobs I've ever had. So when people are like, "Oh, your life is so peachy," I'm like, I got a lot going on.
If you could be inside my head for one day,
Yeah, exactly.
you would completely change your perspective on what it means to be an author. But
Yeah.
definitely, I would say out of all the jobs I've had, it's the most rewarding. Like,
Yeah, oh yeah,
yeah,
for sure.
it doesn't feel like work. Like
Yeah.
I guess I had a 12-hour day, but it didn't feel like
Yeah.
I want to go on the couch and collapse and watch Netflix for the rest of the night.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there is something very energizing about it. And you can't really complain. You get to make up stories for a living. Like that's pretty cool. Very few
Exactly.
jobs allow that. So I think I consider, really all of us very lucky. Especially those of us who can kind of do it as a profession and
Yeah.
those who are working towards it too. So
Exactly. And a lot of the people who are watching this channel are exactly that. They're working toward it. you've seen some of the videos on the channel, but the target audience for Author Level Up is really the intermediate author. It's that author who has published a few books, understands the basics of marketing, and is really looking to level up their next, level up to the next stage in their career. And for many of them, that's full-time author. For others, it's, making more money. But what one piece of advice would you give those authors watching who are wanting to step into your shoes one day?
Well, I mean, I guess, well, first of all, patience. I think that's a big one. I think what changed everything for me was having mentors. And I've talked about this a couple times, but just having people who are just a couple years ahead of you, and not people that you have emailed once and like they responded and now they follow you on Twitter. Not people like that. People that you can genuinely go to and ask them questions, ask them for feedback. And the reason why is because the path to being an author, a full-time author, even like just a published author, all of those paths are known. They're very like known and quantifiable, and there are specific steps that you can take to get down those paths or to get to where you want to go. And the person that's a couple years ahead of you, they know what all those steps are. And so when you come up with a plan, you're kind of still dreaming about this thing that you want to do. When you come up with your plan, it's not going to be a very good plan because you don't really know what you're doing yet. So you come up with that plan. That's great. Take that plan to somebody who has more experience, and they can show you, well, this probably isn't going to work, or this, because like, here's a good example. Whenever I talk to new authors, like maybe people who have one book out, for example, they're like, well, how do you market your books on social media? Like, that's a very common question that I get. And I'm like, you don't market your books on social media. That's just not
exactly.
Not
it's
where
the wrong way to do it.
Yeah, like that's not how you market your books. But so what could happen to somebody is if you have this assumption that you market books on social media, you come up with this great social media plan, you go to implement it, you get no results, and it was just like this huge waste of your time. And somebody who was a couple years ahead of you could have told you that in like 2 seconds, and you would have saved yourself all this drama. So
Exactly.
that's kind of why, that's why I think that the mentorship is so important. And with my mentors, they tell me all sorts of stuff and stop me from making a lot of stupid mistakes. So like, I'm starting a podcast, and luckily I've been on a bunch of podcasts in the last year. So I have friends who podcast now. So I was talking to one of my friends earlier today, and he's like, don't do that. Don't do that. Like he knows so much more about podcasting than me. And he was able to like, within like a couple minutes, like completely change my, like my production and marketing plans for my podcast. And it's because he just knows way more about it. Like he's done it for a couple of years now, and he just knows what to do. So, I just think mentors are just, they're like the rocket fuel for your author career. Like you need to get them.
Yeah, they're the people you follow through the minefield, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, awesome. Well, Monica, I want to thank you for coming on tonight. This has been awesome.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Where's the best place for people to find you and your books?
Well, you can find my website. It's prosonfire.com. And then my books are at prosonfire.com/GHFS, which is Growth Hacking for Storytellers. That will take you directly to Amazon, and then you can look at all the books in the series. And
awesome.
they're on Kindle Unlimited. So that's why they're only on Amazon.
Cool. Well, don't worry. I'll put links to all the links that you mentioned in the video comments. So,
awesome.
So people can go grab your books. And I wholeheartedly recommend Monica's books as well. And for those of you watching, if this is your first time watching, I'd love to have you guys subscribe. Every week I do videos with craft, marketing, and business advice. And on Saturdays, I do business videos with publishing industry news. So if you want to see more interviews like this with Monica Leonelle and other successful authors, be sure to subscribe. And we'll be sure to see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. And thanks again, Monica, for the interview.
Yeah, thanks for having me.